In first world countries, the way domestic human trafficking happens is where someone that you know, like most likely your boyfriend, will slowly invest time in you, and over time be like, oh, you know what, we want to start a family, we don't have a house, manipulate her slowly into getting into like stripping, and then eventually getting into sex work. And wants to leave when they have enough money, then the guy will be like, now I have pictures and videos of you. If you don't continue this, then I'm going to tell your family and friends. Because did you know, when I did research on schizophrenia, around the world, people who have schizophrenia, they say the same thing. They all say that either the government is doing something, or the military is doing something, or the alien is doing something. That is something that I noticed, one trend. And they don't know each other. It's like around the world, they feel the same thing. It's kind of weird but interesting. It's different. So I am an actress in Canada, and the auditions that I get there and the auditions that I get here is vastly different. Because in Canada, I have been quite aware that I'm Indian. Like they're like, oh, you're Indian, you're an Indian girl. But in India, I feel like a lot of people play on to the fact that I'm Canadian. Though I have personally not been affected with schizophrenia, I have been personally affected with anxiety and depression previously.
Hello and welcome to Business Upturn. My name is Sandeep, and right now I have with me someone who has actually achieved a lot in her career, and she's an Indo-Canadian actress, I'd say. And she's not just an actress, she's a filmmaker as well. Well, and she's the proud recipient of the Women's Achiever Award with a number of films in her kitty. We welcome you to our podcast, Shreya. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. Shreya, at the very outset, I'd like to know I went through your filmography, and I kind of, found some really interesting and riveting topics that you actually made these films on, some very prolific documentaries as well. You have made a film on human trafficking. What was your entire experience, and how did that actually come into place, and how did that come to pass?
So for a long time, I was a model, and while I was modeling, I had some experiences when I was doing some charity work around. And during those charity organizations, I had like this feeling of what I'm doing with my life, and I wanted to go tell stories to give voice to the people who are not empowered. So I went back to Canada because I was modeling around the world, but I went back to Canada. I did my documentary in film studies. And my first documentary was about domestic human trafficking. And that was just by fluke, because I thought I was interviewing a girl who was coming out of like sex work. And she's trying to like get back into the community and how the community perceives her.
Actually taken herself out of that situation.
That's what I thought.
And domestic trafficking as well is a topic which is not really spoken about, publicly. People know that it exists, it happens, but people don't really talk about it.
Yeah, like I thought that she was just a sex worker, and I was like, how does it feel to be back in the community? You quit sex traffic, like you quit sex work, right? And she's like, oh no, like I was actually domestic human trafficked. And I was like, I don't know what that means. So for us, we normally think that domestic, like human trafficking is when someone is kidnapped and pushed into sex labor, but that's not the case. In first world countries, the way domestic human trafficking happens is where someone that you know, like most likely your boyfriend, will slowly invest time in you, and over time be like, oh, you know what, we want to start a family, we don't have a house, manipulate her slowly into getting into like stripping, and then eventually getting into sex work. And wants to leave when they have enough money, then the guy will be like, now I have pictures and videos of you. If you don't continue this, then I'm going to tell your family and friends. She was domestic human trafficked. It happens within the country borders. They're not human smuggled.
Sure, you've also made a film on mental instability, and you've actually, you actually juxtaposed it with the professional and the personal life as well of that particular character, the lead character for that. How did you kind of how did you zero in on the topic firstly, and secondly, did you at any point in time of your life, did you kind of come across such people, perhaps people having such disabilities, trying to coping up with these disabilities in their real lives?
So for me, my first film was Vivid, which I was really grateful to do because I studied about this cinematographer in school, and to actually book a film with him and do it was just a dream come true. And it was about a woman that went through schizophrenia. It's based on a true story. So for me to get that role, it was just like I'm really grateful. And plus, I'm a mental health advocate. Though I have personally not been affected with schizophrenia, I have been personally affected with anxiety and depression previously. Schizophrenia is something that is like insanely severe, and it's very like you hear voices and things like that. And to get into that character, it was very hard. Like I did tons of research. Like I met people who have been affected by schizophrenia. I even spoke to my director. I watched films. I even like was watching some people that were having episodes of schizophrenia to like really take like what happens, because I wanted to be very authentic with
Okay,
what I
Shreya, hold
do.
it right there. I'm sorry to interrupt. You know what? You just said that you actually met up with people who actually are victims of schizophrenia and people who suffer from schizophrenia. What was that in? What were those interactions like? I mean, what kind of questions did you perhaps ask them? What kind of interactions did you have? Was it very disturbing? Was it? I mean, how was it?
So some people, the few people, very few that I knew personally that go through this, it was like they go through a lot of, they feel like they're two people sometimes. It's not split
Is it easy
personalities.
for them to
You just
describe
hear
the
people.
situation that they are in?
You know what? The people that I spoke to personally, they have been getting medication and help for a really long time. So they know
I
when they're
see.
having these episodes. So they know that, you know what, like this is how it's happening. I have tools with me to deal with these things. So when they were sharing that experience with me, it was very different than someone that is going through an episode themselves, because they know how to deal with it. So they're able to talk about it very openly. However, you know that there's something different, as in like they'll be like, you know, sometimes I hear voices. I feel like it's the government that is doing something to me, or I feel like it's aliens doing something to me. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because did you know when I did research on schizophrenia around the world, people who have schizophrenia, they say the same thing. They all say that either the government is doing something, or the military is doing something, or the alien is doing something. That is something that I noticed, one trend. And they don't know each other. It's like around the world they feel the same thing. It's kind of weird but interesting.
You're also very interesting film that you made during the COVID pandemic, for that matter. It actually, if correct me if I'm wrong, it actually brought together 100 cast members from 66 countries and 6 different continents. How did you manage that humongous?
That project still puts a smile on my face, because I just feel like I'm the medium from the universe to create this documentary for in the future when someone wants
Love
to see
beats
what
the
COVID looks
virus.
like.
Hashtag love beats the virus or something. I forgot the name.
Yeah, yeah, love spreads faster than a virus.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's actually just got, I guess I'm revealing it here, but it actually just got into a film festival, and it's an opening film for one of the film festivals in Germany.
Wow, that's
So
lovely.
that's happening in a few months. Yeah, I mean that documentary has gotten so much love from around the world, and I've been very grateful because I've been part of this Forbes under 30 group for like a global group for a bit now, and those people are very passionate, very like strong and hardworking. So when I told them that I had this project in mind, there were a bunch of people who I don't even know came together to help me get these countries. And it was magic. Like I've never made a film in 2 months sitting in my bedroom, because there were so many people that were like interested in it. There was so much love. And you realize when you watch it that no matter what country you come from, what languages you speak, we're all just one race, which is human.
So tell me, everything happened over the camera and the webcam.
Yeah, it was like they shot it themselves. I told them how to shoot it, what I wanted, the questions that I wanted, and then they shot
What
it
are the
themselves.
challenges that you're facing? I'm sure everybody, everybody who was in the cast is not really very familiar with shooting. Inside your home, or perhaps not familiar with shooting for that matter. How did you manage it all? How did you manage to get quality shots of the film? And did you kind of direct them, and perhaps, and how was the post production part, the dubbing part, and everything?
So for me, the documentary, there were a little bit of hiccups, as in like we all are working from around the world, so the time difference is insane. You're working around the clock.
Yeah.
So I did have some field producers in Germany and Armenia who would like work when I'm sleeping, and then I'll be working when they're sleeping. And sometimes some of the people in the documentary, they would shoot it on their phones, which is fine, but then they would send it to me on WhatsApp. And I'm like, no, the
Oh,
quality
okay.
of this is not right. Please send it to me on Google Drive. We transfer it. So that was a little hard. So many people, like, and it's so difficult to get in touch with all these 100 people, because some of them they're not all coming from me. They're all coming from some of my other field producers. So I'm like, no, tell them to send it to me and we transfer. So that was quite difficult to get everyone to send it to me properly. Some of them just didn't. So we had to manage to put them in the documentary, which actually kind of makes it authentic and more human, because not everything is supposed to be perfect. It's a pandemic.
Right, absolutely.
So it was very raw in that sense, which actually connected with people even more, which was nice. And then post-production, I edit myself. However, I did find someone, a friend of a friend of a friend, who is a really good editor, and he does a lot of films and commercials back in the US. So he was my second editor who did color grading and who did some work on it, like animation and stuff like that on it. So it was a team effort, even music and stuff. One of my friends, he's a musician. So he ended up writing a song for it in less than 2 months and mastering it and everything. So it's been a team effort, really.
Okay, I see. Shreya, you've got to shed light on some of perhaps the more gruesome revelations that occurred to you during your research of these films, during your perhaps, I mean, just like you just mentioned that you kind of interacted with these schizophrenic patients, and for instance, the topic of your films, they are so hard hitting, and they're really firstly, did you ever think of making a film in India? And what do you think would have been the challenges for you if you kind of thought of making a film in India, vis-a-vis you're making a film in Canada?
Yeah, for me, like currently I am in India and my plans are to stay here. So I am actually thinking of making a documentary here, which is about Gurukul system. And like, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with it. So basically I was in Rishikesh for a month and a half before I moved to Bombay a couple of weeks ago. And I met someone who has been in a Gurukul for 17 years, very young boy. But it's kind of, I've never heard that exists. Like I never knew that Gurukuls exist, because for me, it's like when you see back in the day, centuries ago in the myths, you hear that like
centuries ago you have.
Yeah, they go to Gurukuls, and I'm like, that's interesting. So, but it's very rare. So what happens is during colonialism, they decided that if you cut India's Gurukul system, then you'll be able to divide and conquer. So that's when Gurukuls went down completely. And there's very rare Gurukuls in India. So I finally met someone who's part of that while I was in yoga school. So I kind of want to do something with him and make something here. The difficulties, I mean, I don't have a team here. That's the thing. So I'm trying to build a team for my filmmaking so I can take them and shoot something. But otherwise, I'm going to shoot it myself. And while I do that, I'm also acting. So I'm also writing a show, and I'm also like auditioning to be in India right now.
Okay, I have two questions coupled in one, even though they're not related exactly. But the first part of my question is, what are the more gruesome incidents, perhaps things that really have hit you hard, especially because of the fact that your research work and the kind of films that you make, they're very hard hitting in themselves. What are those incidents, perhaps, what are those, things that perhaps you might have spoken to about a particular situation with a particular person who has been in that situation, in that gruesome situation? Did it really hit back? Were there any instances which you could perhaps share with us? And the second part of my question was, don't you ever have an urge to make a mainstream, a Bollywood mainstream movie, for that matter, as in with pertinent subjects, and a mainstream film, for that matter, in Canada?
So for the first question that you had about having gruesome, like impactful things that happened. So when I first became a documentary filmmaker, when I was in school for it, I wanted to always do topics on something that breaks the taboo or something that's educational. So I have had some interesting stories. Actually, my first topic was not domestic human trafficking. It was about a murder case that happened in my hometown. And it was very hard hitting because this young girl, during a New Year's in a small town, was murdered, and barely any news happens there, but she was murdered by she was a teacher. So one of the girls that she was teaching, her mother and her boyfriend was the one who murdered her because of sick sexual urges. So it was a very, very interesting kind of a story, and it was close to me because it happened in my hometown, and nothing ever happens in my hometown that is this gruesome. So when I found out more information about that, I couldn't do the documentary because the trial of that, the court case moved to the next year, and I had to make something that year, so I couldn't do it on there. But the research, some of the things that I found out was shocking, and those things affect me as a filmmaker as well, because yes, I'm just a filmmaker, I'm away from it, but then I'm doing the research, so I kind of get close to the topic. So
That's
that was
exactly what I'm
very
talking
hard. It was very, very hard. Even when I did my first film as an actress for Vivid, to get out of that character, it took me a while. Like I felt like I was just her. I have had anxiety and panic attacks while on set. And my director and my cinematographer, they were so kind and so nice, and they would always take care of me. And it was those topics are hard to talk about, and those topics are hard to experience as well while
Yes,
you're
yes.
acting in it. So it has been a very, very interesting journey in that sense. But I think it's important that we talk about these things. It's important that we shed light on topics that are taboo and has stigmatized for such a long time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the second question about mainstream, I'm for India, like I'm so excited to get back into acting. Like I love acting. I actually even wrote a show which has like Indians as a lead, which I'm shooting in July. It's called Layla is Relevant, which is going to be a web series.
Okay.
But for me in India, mostly I'm focusing on acting here. So I've been auditioning tons since I've come back. Just been 2 weeks, but I've been lucky enough to start auditioning this quickly. And obviously, I'm going to be making my documentary in India. However, eventually, over time, I definitely want to be going into a scripted, which is why I'm starting with web series, and then eventually, I want to get into scripted series and films. That's the goal. But I'm like still so young, and I'm still trying to figure out and learn, and maybe
Yeah.
even assist someone in it so I can figure out how to do it properly. So
So tell me how has
experience, right?
absolutely. So tell me how the experience in Bollywood has been so far. I mean, the fact that you've already started auditioning, how have the reactions of people towards you? I mean, how are the reactions of people towards you, or have they affected you? I mean, what was it like?
So I have been in India before. I lived here for 4 years. I was modeling full time. Like I did Lakme Fashion Week and in Delhi, like the tour week and all these things. I've done all that. So I've known the industry for a while in that sense. So I've had a taste of
Okay.
Bollywood even before, but now it's like the full focus, and it's different. So I am an actress in Canada, and the auditions that I get there and the auditions that I get here is vastly different. Because in Canada, I have been quite aware that I'm Indian. Like they're like, oh, you're Indian, you're an Indian girl. But in India, I feel like a lot of people play on to the fact that I'm Canadian.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
oh, you're from Canada, you're from Canada. Like people are just, I'm like, yeah, but I'm Indian. And like, so in both, it's weird. Like in both countries, both of them are my countries.
Mhm.
The other plays part in it majorly. So since I've been here, it's been quite interesting. I've been getting really great feedback actually. I've been very, very grateful for it. And the first thing they ask me is like, oh, you have an accent. Like, do you speak Hindi? And I'm like, yes, I can read, write. मुझे हिंदी बहुत अच्छी तरह से बोलनी आती है. मुझे पढ़ भी सकती हूँ, लिख भी सकती हूँ. Like, because since I was very young, I have been at home, you have to speak in Gujarati or Hindi. That was the case. So I have been very close to my culture in that sense. So yeah, it's been a very great feedback, and I've been lucky enough to get these auditions. And I just came here like 2 weeks ago, so it's going to be a while, but it's been a good time so far. Minus COVID, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
I have my fingers crossed.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Before I let you go, Shreya, you've got to tell me. I mean, the one last question that I have to ask you is: 5 years down the line, where do you see yourself? What are the kind of films that you perhaps want to do in India? And if ever you get back to Canada, back to filmmaking, what are the kind of films that you would like to make?
So for me, in 5 years, I want to be able to do impact-driven films. That has always been my purpose in life, is to do impact-driven work through creativity, may it be films, editing, acting, anything. So in India, there's a lot of need for people to talk about mental health,
Yeah.
people to talk about like topics that are stigmatized, because you know what, it is normal. We all are human, we go through things, and it's okay to talk about it. So I would love to write and even make impact driven films as well as act in them. That is the goal for me. And even if and I love comedy. I would love to get into comedy. I've been doing comedy in Canada for past 4 years. I've been trained in it.
Oh,
So I would love to get into comedy in
so have you ever tried your hand in
India.
stand-up comedy for that matter? There are numerous stand-up comedy shows that are streamed on Netflix and Amazon Prime for that matter.
Yes. Yes, so I have been part of Second City. I don't know if you know what Second. So do you know Saturday Night Live?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a show. Yeah, so that show started from Second City Conservatory. And so Second City is basically like a school, like it's not a school, it is kind of like a school where a lot of Hollywood stars have trained in. It is an extremely difficult program to get in. I've trained there, but not only did I train there, I actually got into the conservatory program there as well, which was like life-changing. So one whole year I trained there. I wrote a 90-minute show with an ensemble and it got a standing ovation. Like it's so basically improv and sketch comedy is where my hold is. And I do want to get into stand-up comedy. I haven't tried my luck in it, but I'm getting more and more into it. But my main solid thing is an improv and sketch comedy. So I know that I watch a lot of stand-up stuff from India. I love these things. As soon as this COVID stops, I would love to join an improv team and start doing stuff here because there's some phenomenal work that's happening here in the comedy scene.
Absolutely. Well, as far as the COVID stopping situation is concerned, I'm not quite sure whether it's going to happen anytime soon.
No.
Because no one quite knows when this pandemic is actually
in the world, we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very precarious situation. I mean, it's scary, very scary. Yeah. All right, okay. So with that, we come to the end of this lovely, and very enlightening and a very candid conversation with the very, very beautiful Shreya Patel. Here's wishing you, Shreya, all the very best and all of the successes that you're actually trying to achieve. I really hope you really get it all. Thank you so much. It was really great.
Lovely to talk to you as well. Thank you. Let it go, make my body go, make our bodies high.